Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Miles Morales. What if Miles Morales? Issue number one. This particular one is called "What If Miles Morales Were Captain America." Uh, Doing this one live because I feel like it. Anyway, um, just notice the black brick background on the back. You can kind of still see my figures in the back. Look, armadillo right up there. Anyway, I decided to do this one live because I found that I was rambling way too much in the other one. Wasn't rambling, but anytime that you do something for a long time, somebody's going to call it rambling. So yeah, I was rambling. Anyway, let's get talk about who made this comic book, and we'll go on from there. Cody Ziegler is the writer, Paco Medina on art, three inkers. And when you have somebody like Paco Medina doing this, yeah, you need a lot of inkers because he's a badass. So you got Walden Wong, who I've never heard of before, but Victor Lazabra and Sean Parsons, of whom I have heard of them. Chris Sotomayor, I think everybody's heard of him on colors, and VC's Corey Petit doing the letters. It's Paco Medina doing the art, but unfortunately on the cover they got Sarah Bocelli and Alejandro Sanchez. Not to disparage them, but Paco Medina doesn't need somebody doing his covers for him. And you got a whole bunch of variant covers on here. Um, I believe all of these are people of color, which tells you a lot about freaking Marvel Comics nowadays. Hey, I'm always happy to see a Brian Stelfleet and a Kari Andrews and Humberto Ramos and Edgar Delgado. These guys are just amazing. Ivan Coelho, come on, say I can't think of anything that Torrin Clark has done offhand, but the other guys I've met, I've shaken hands with, I've praised. I mean, come on. Anyway, which says a lot that a Walden Wong gets top billing for inks on this. Says a lot, and hopefully this is a good thing. I don't know who did what on the inks here, but the inks look solid on here, so I'm very pleased with how this comic turned out. Anyhow, so this comic book really disappointed me in a lot of different ways, man, and we're gonna get into all that good stuff. There was a couple things that were kind of cool, but for the most part, no. I loved the art, just so you guys know. I'm down with the art. There's very little about the art that I didn't like. The shading, the color, you can see right away what's old, what's new, and it works. The colors really, or excuse me, the not just the colors, the art in here actually really works. Any part where the art doesn't work, it's because of the writing, and I'll try to remember to get into stuff like that as we scroll down, and I'll try and save the comments till later if there are any. This is very early in the morning, and people have work. I work from home, so I can literally just transition. Anyway, we start off with a quick little origin story. How what if there was no Captain America, meaning Steve Rogers? That was cool. The way that they show it here is they indicate that it was. They show the castle here. So this is where he was not able to save Bucky. Later on, and I think it was Avengers number 10, it would be revealed that Helmut Zemo is actually the reason why the original Baron Zemo was the reason why um, Bucky was killed, and here apparently it's Captain America who was killed, or in this case, also killed. I think they both died because they didn't even mention Bucky in this, which is a shame, but it is what it is. Anyway, Captain America dies, and they also show that he has his heater shield, the one instead of the round one, the frisbee one. Um, so, depending on the writer, you could argue that Captain America existed for 1 year in the Earth 616 or up to 2 years in the Earth 616, right? Depending on who was writing those stories or which writers you're basing this stuff on, he was only in existence for a maximum of 2 years. In reality, he got that round shield starting with issue number 2 of Captain America Comics, right? Written and art done by both Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. They did interplay once in a while. Anyhow, only in that first issue, one issue of a comic book. So the legacy of Captain America doesn't seem that solid. So for all these years later, for the modern day, to show that they kept the new shield, like this is a symbol of, even though they could have kept the original one, and they had a whole bunch of the super soldier serums later on that they tried to recreate and whatnot, or maybe it was the original, or maybe who cares, right? They don't go into any of that stuff, and it's a what if, so they shouldn't have to. But one of the key features of a what if comic book is that there's one thing that changes. Even if you look back in the old one, there's no Watcher in this, which is heartbreaking. How is it a what if comic book without the Watcher, right? Anyway, narrating this stuff. Anyway, even if you look at the old Watcher stories, right, and like in the Tales to Astonish and so forth, you'll see like the Watcher, one decision that he makes, one decision to not interfere, allows for people to save themselves and things like that, right? One decision is what makes it. What if Wolverine became the Lord of the Vampires? One little thing, oh, his healing factor for some reason didn't work on the vampire, you know, toxin, right? And he wound up becoming a vampire. Okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, like one little thing. And here there was no one little thing. There was too many things, and not a single one of them had any relevancy to each other. So it was a lot of things that caused them. So it was this story, this origin, at the very least, was plot driven. Now, as long as the story itself wasn't plot driven, we're good, right? But no, sorry, we're not good because every single thing about this was plot driven, not character driven. There's no reason to cheer Miles Morales. There's no reason to boo the bad guy. Zzz. Yeah, they're plural. Um, what do you call it? Miles' father and uncle are, for some reason, in charge of the. Instead of being a police officer or whatever, they're here in the military and they're watching and they're talking about Captain America's shield that he never got to use, and here's all the super soldier serums back here. And there's no security whatsoever, and here's just this guy who's clearly always getting Uncle Aaron, who's clearly always getting in trouble. Why? Because he's always getting in trouble in the comic books, and he's always getting in trouble in the Spider Verse stuff. Like he's just that guy, so he has to still be that guy. So it's just a trope of the character. It's not the character himself. It's just a shell, a very weak facsimile of this character. So he just somehow is able to here's this guy who's big on regulations, and Uncle Aaron just steals one of the super soldier serums. Nobody's going to notice, and he doesn't even get in trouble. He doesn't get caught, right? Military police are no joke, right? Look, who you know what I'm saying? Who's braver than a soldier, right? You can argue a firefighter. Actually, that actually works with this. Police aren't trained to run towards bullets. Sorry, if you're a cop, you know that's true. You know what I'm saying? Soldiers are trained. Hey, if there are bullets flying and you got to move forward, you still got to move forward. I don't know what to tell you. You do it intelligently, and we know how to do it. Most of us. You know what I'm saying? But like, you don't, right? You don't sit there and be like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? You want to get in a lot of trouble for something like that, right? So you can't, and just like firefighters, say they run towards a fire while everybody else is running away. Um, you can't intimidate your average soldier the way that cops intimidate people. You can't do that. MPs can't intimidate. I'll bust you down and I'll have you court-martialed. Blah blah blah. But like you, they don't care. You know what I'm saying? It's like, dude, right is right, not might. So you're not going to intimidate your average soldier. So military police have to be a little bit more thorough, a little bit in their investigations and whatnot. And everything that they do is going to come before a panel of higher ups. It's not just going to be, well, we have to take the word of our police officers. That doesn't happen with MPs. You need a litany of charges and proofs for every single one of them. Anyway, so somehow Uncle Aaron gets away with this completely scot-free. Why? Because it's a plot-driven story. It's a plot-driven origin. It's a plot-driven comic book. Okay, moving on. So he takes it home, and there's nothing special. Miles isn't in danger or anything like that. He finds this thing, this thermos-looking thing, and there's no safety seal on it or anything like that. Just the glass is supposed to protect it. He puts in the refrigerator. It's a sealed thermos type material, and you're gonna put it in the freaking the refrigerator. Really? And Miles just and smells it, and all of a sudden, oh no, don't get me in trouble. And right away, freaking Uncle Aaron recognizes what happened from outside. Oh no, he knows what the serum like. Come on. This was such a pathetic opening couple of pages, and you could have used these pages. You could have used all of these opening. How many pages was this to show his origin story? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pages. You could have had this where you indicated that Captain America had died in the line of battle somewhere, just like whatever, and somehow Miles was injured, maybe trying to act like Captain America, right? And you could do the blood transfusion thing, or you could even do something similar to this, that Uncle Aaron does wind up breaking in and stealing this thing, and there's proofs and everything, because video cameras are a thing nowadays. You can't walk down the street without there being photos of you and video footage of you and where you're going and all that stuff, right? You can't go anywhere without that nowadays. There's a camera everywhere, for crying out loud. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't see you. And somehow there was no security anyway. So he steals one of these things, knowing he's going to get in trouble, and he does get in trouble. But he comes back and he's able to give the because maybe there's just a glimmer of hope that this kid who was just hit by a car and a semi, and he's barely hanging on to life, but the super soldier serum is going to save his life, and it does, and he is actually worthy of the super soldier serum. Just something, and this is just literally off the top of my head, guys. This is live. This is real time. Just something as simple as this, right? But then Uncle Aaron goes to jail, and we don't see Uncle Aaron anymore, except in his thoughts, because Miles knows, hey, my uncle, maybe he wasn't the greatest guy in the world. Maybe he wasn't the greatest soldier, but he was a great person. And he saved my life. And he ended his own life. He ended his career and put himself in a military prison for the rest of his life, probably, just to save my life. And I'm going to do good by what he did. You know, boom. Suddenly, Miles Morales starts off as being a hero instead of just some freak accident, right? Peter Parker didn't get bit by a spider and just walk around and do whatever. No, so he went off and became a wrestler, and he got it, and he wound up allowing his killer to escape so he can go off and kill his Uncle Ben, and then he just realizes, oh my God, this mistake. Like, there's a hero story there. There's no hero story here. How did Miles get the superpower? Because his uncle was somehow the greatest thief in the world, walking out like this of the place, the military installation that he stole this thing from. Walks out, oh yeah, nobody will know that I did this. There are no cameras, right? There's no security, no alarms. This guy who's really big on regulations wasn't big on regulations at this point. I guess I was his blind spot. Come on, man. There was no hero story. The kid was looking for something to eat. He was a little thirsty, and not even in the cool way. He was a little thirsty, so he became a superhero. I'm a little thirsty, real fast. Like, I'm out of water right. I got to go out there and I got to refill my water. I'm thirsty. Can I have a superpower? Can I be the super soldier? Like, this was dumb. This was heartbreakingly dumb. So somehow Uncle Aaron winds up joining Miles's. They winds up becoming his Bucky, essentially. And he winds up, what do you call it? Almost getting killed by the Black Widow program, and he thinks he's killed, and it's like, Uncle Aaron. It's like, this guy's not in jail for what he did, because nobody. It's just, oh, cool. Isaiah Bradley, right, steals a Captain America uniform and a shield, and he gets in the biggest trouble of his life. What was it? 17 years, if I remember correctly, from Red, White, and Black. 17 years in prison, court-martialed because that one little discretion. My God. Even though he should have been given hero status and Purple Hearts and clusters and stuff like, come on, man. Silver Star at the very least. They say he goes to jail. But this cat, like, this is just pathetic. This is pathetic. They didn't even use Isaiah Bradley in here. This was supposed to be a black comic. Like, at the end of the day, when you look at this, all they do is they put a black face on everything. And right away, this is a story. This is a situation where it's like, ooh, special, right? And they didn't even choose to use Isaiah Bradley in this, or Eli. Like, come on. Come on. That's that's just heartbreaking. So, what is this? Uncle Aaron is killed, and on the very next page, you see the Prowler. I just remember what I teach, what I just remind you of. I don't care if it's and Cody Ziegler, the guy who wrote this comic book. This guy's done movies. He does a podcast, and he attributes himself as being a writer also. Nuh-uh. Not one worth any kind of salt. And I don't want to make this personal. I'm not going to say any bad names about this guy, only about his lack of talent in writing comic books. Excuse me. Wow. This cat. If you're reading a Batman or a Sherlock Holmes story, and Batman, in the very first few pages of the comic book, knows who the killer is, And all throughout the comic book, he knows everything. And we can't follow along how we came up with this, how we figured out that, anything. Then, I mean, come on. Even in the 66 Batman, think about it. All right. The 66 Batman television series, right? Whenever the Riddler was involved, there would always be one of those kind of cases where, oh, hey, check it out. What is black and white and red all over? Oh, a penguin with a sunburn, Batman? Don't be silly, Robin. A newspaper. And in today's newspaper article, such and such and such. That stuff was so unbelievable. And yet, at least they gave the idea of how Batman figured this stuff out, right? At least they tried. So you could follow along and be like, okay, cool. In this particular case, look, if the hero knows more than the reader, then the hero seems omniscient and OP. Oh, that's overpowered. And the reader feels stupid. They feel like I can't follow along with this. This is a dumb comic book. But in this case, it's the exact opposite. The hero doesn't know anything, and we know everything. The second that we see the Prowler outfit, we know for a fact that it's going to be freaking Uncle Aaron. There was no doubt in it. And you probably had the idea that he was going to switch sides and become a good guy again. Even though he knew who Miles was, somehow, whatever, brainwashing, whatever. He just decides to switch sides, right? Like this was heartbreaking how sad this was. The second you saw the Prowler, you knew what was going on, but Miles didn't know. Miles wasn't supposed to know, but the writer knew, and the writer was supposed to make this in a way that we didn't know. It's like this was just terrible. This was so terrible, so terribly put together. Now, the first thing that I actually liked in the comic book was when Starling showed up. This is a Ahmed character. Ahmed is his last name. Saladin Ahmed, right? I believe Saladin Ahmed created Starling, and she's a fantastic character. I love this character. So as soon as I saw her and she's in the old the Sam Wilson Captain America uniform, I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Because she is a tough, like they're both very strong characters. They're very powerful characters, I should say. Miles has his own strength, and his strength is in his meekness, right? One of the things that I love, the best new character that Marvel has created in a ridiculously long time, a Bendis creation. You know what I'm saying? Miles Morales. He's a freaking fantastic character, and he's just the meek shall inherit the earth, right? This guy deserves that. He's salt of the earth. He's an amazing, beautiful-hearted character, and Starling is extremely rough around the edges and very, very strong-willed. But she's a good person, and I love her. Who's had some bad backgrounds. I mean, she's got that vulture in her background, right? And I love these two. Like I love the characters individually, but I especially love these two characters together. They are such a perfect, you know, like you juxtapose one on top of the other, and they just make this incredible amalgamation of really good storytelling or the potential for good storytelling, right? And she's done very well in this comic book. For to give credit where credit's due, she's done very well in this comic book. She's written well. But after that, like that was the only good thing. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. They made her Falcon. She's got the wings, and oh, it makes sense. Yeah, no, it's cool. But yeah, just silly things happen, and then we find out about the Gray Skull. The Gray Skull. They need to make a He-Man comic by the power of, yeah, the Gray Skull. Really? So you just took basically this is a combination of the Red Skull and Wilson Fisk, but you decided to make him black because this is supposed to be a black comic book, right? This wasn't a woke comic book where it's all black heroes, but the villains are all white, right? It wasn't one of those kind of things because low hanging fruit. It wasn't even like, oh, but they tricked the Prowler, Uncle Aaron, into being a bad guy. So you see, the white people are even worse. No, they didn't even do that. They actually made the villains in this bad also. And while the Gray Skull could have been a version of Tobias Whale, for the Black Lightning villain, main antagonist. No, this was just a very bland version of whatever. Since he's great, I guess he's supposed to be like a black guy with albinism, which is sad, right? Like, why you just darken the skin color of this dude? They made Genki a villain. They actually made him the Tinker in this. I, so right away we know that he's going to wind up turning to be a good guy also at some point, right? Um, this is what. How does the Gray Skull talk in this? Hope you tinkering with that thing isn't your way of stalling. Stalin, not stalling, Stalin. So I'll get to it. So you can collect overtime. Really? They get paid hourly in the villain schools? Is that how it works? Because, buddy, time is the one thing we don't got. I can't read this. I can't read this. There is nothing of any cultural significance to this. I know you're seeing a white guy talking about black culture. If only you knew me. And don't be so racist and judge me by my skin color. This is supposed to be like you look at this, and this is like he's militant and all this stuff, and he's not representative of a Black Panther, in our world, not in the Earth 616. He's not representative of like NOI, the Nation of Islam. He doesn't have any FOI, the Fruit of Islam, air about him. He's just this guy who kind of looks like Apocalypse, but he's not even close, right? And he talks black. Some people wonder, can black people be racist? When you have a black person basically doing blackface on a character, you'd have to argue yes. I'm not sitting here trying to make a comparison or anything like that, but at the end of the day, like this was so bad. There was nothing of cultural significance. This wasn't even like Black Manta. Back in the remember when Black Manta was put out and they said, "Oh yeah, uh, black men are treated horribly in America and all over the world, so I'm going to make a haven for black people in the sea so that we have a chance to actually advance and become great and blah blah blah." And they abandoned that storyline, which I guess they saw it as problematic. Go figure. That was a far better storyline than this. I mean, look, you have to understand the protagonist is not always the hero, but in this case, yes, the protagonist is the hero, right? And that's supposed to be Miles Morales, but he hasn't done a single heroic thing in this entire comic book. The whole entirety of this comic book, not one single heroic act, right? The the main villain in this is not actually the antagonist. The main villain is the Gray Skull, who in Star Wars would be the equivalent of the Emperor. The main antagonist, however, in Star Wars would have been Darth Vader. And that's more like what the Uncle Aaron, aka Prowler, story is in here. And it's always been based off of that. So I'm glad that Cody Ziegler was at least able to get that much out of the comic books. But the turn wasn't believable. Nothing was believable in this, right? The 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 everything in here was just so generic. It was so base. It's been used, it's been done. The whole, "Oh my god, is that your girlfriend?" Come on, man. You have symbiotes in here. Aren't symbiotes overdone enough as it stands? I God. Like symbiotes are so overused nowadays. It's pathetic. And to just, I'm gonna throw symbiotes in this also because symbiotes make everything better. What are you, freaking Donny Cates at this point? Donny Cates good. Are you gonna do Hulk issue number 6? Sure, I'll do Hulk number 6 right now. When the Will Moss turns around and says, "Oh yeah, this is like the character that's introduced in here is basically the Hulk's Null." You mean the guy who created Null, the Living Darkness? No, not that one, a different one. When he creates Null and then turns around and just says, "Well, I'm going to make a Null for everybody." So like the Black Winter is Thor's Null. If he starts writing for Captain America, God, please don't let that happen. He's going to make a Null for Captain America also. What would it be? The epitome of cowardice. I mean, like this is pathetic. This is so pathetic. All of this is pathetic. Weak attempts to do stories and do little, rah. The symbiotes had no use in this whatsoever. There's no unless you're going to argue, well, symbiotes are black, so there's that. This was just so sad. This was pathetically sad. There's a slobber knocker of fight. Stuff is the symbiotes show up and they're immediately dispelled. Hey, this is terrible. This is so terrible. Oh no, look, the Tesseract was used, which is actually the Cosmic Cube. Um, Miles, but the fight scenes actually looked good, but then you look at the writing in this, like, oh my God, this is so. I'm crying. I'm crying at how bad this was. This was just so bad. The turn, there was nothing special about this. There was nothing heartwarming. You saw all of this coming from a mile away. Even uh, I have something that's indestructible too, namely the shield. And there's the gray skull. Might as well just call him the black skull. The gray skull sitting there. Are you out of your curse word mind? It's gonna blow. That's that's the main bad guy. That's the ultimate bad guy in this. And then Miles sees versions of himself in the future. He sees a version of him as Wolverine, but it's very original because he's got 4 claws instead of 3 on each hand. And that's going to be the next issue. Yeah, this story is going to continue. So what if Miles Morales were Wolverine? But then the next one is apparently going to be what if Miles Morales were worthy of Thor's hammer? So in this one he's worthy of the super soldier serum, and in the next one the 2 from now he's going to be worthy of Mjolnir also. That's where if you're even if you're new to comic books and you've only read 100 or maybe 1,000 comic books even, you still know enough to look at this and say that this is sad because this is 2, 3 pages until the end. 3 pages into the end of the story. And I looked at this and I'm just like, you just did the worst trope imaginable. Let's make somebody else worthy of Thor's hammer. Look, it's like when you call somebody racist nowadays, it doesn't mean anything because everybody's racist nowadays. If you call somebody a fascist, it doesn't mean anything because everybody's a fascist nowadays, right? None of this stuff matters anymore. People don't know how to use words. People don't know how to use antonyms or synonyms anymore. Just let's use a word and let's just trope it out. This is just so sad. After Walter Simonson's 5-year amazing run on Thor, where in the very beginning he made somebody worthy of Thor's hammer besides Thor, Beta Ray Bill. And then after that, I think it was Roger Stern, but I don't remember exactly. I'm not positive on that. Don't quote me. Unless I'm right, then quote me all day. I think it was Roger Stern who made Captain America finally worthy, and that made sense also. But there was not a single story that came afterwards where it made sense for anybody to be worthy, because then everybody's worthy. See where I was going with this? If everybody's worthy, then nobody's worthy. That everybody can just do, like it's easy to say that Deadpool shouldn't be worthy, right? But I bet you could write a convincing story where he is, right? He does something, and then just for a couple of minutes, he's worthy, just long enough to save the universe, right? But Superman's worthy, Wonder Woman's worthy. You got to make Batman worthy, right? You absolutely have to make um, Green Lantern worthy, and I'm talking about not just Hal Jordan, but John Stewart and probably Kyle Rayner too. Forget Guy Gardner, hell of that guy. But Aquaman should be worthy, right? Red Tornado should be lifted up because he's an android. Like, everybody should be worthy at some point. Otherwise, because if you're not worthy, then it's sad. It's sad, and I can't help but making wrestling comparisons here because Cody Rhodes, Dolph Ziggler, Cody Ziggler. But I mean, when you have, God, this is so sad. When you have people from outside of your industry come into your industry, right? And this isn't my industry. I'm just a guy who reads comic books. I don't make comic books. I have no interest in making comic books, right? When you have somebody coming into the thing that you watch, when you see these writers, these great writers just come in and just like, I'm gonna do this totally awesome, comic book. And have you ever done a comic book before? No. Then why are you in Marvel and or DC? Why do you get to go and do this stuff? Meanwhile, I'm a member of Facebook groups and I don't contribute because I don't try to do comic books. But when I'm looking at actual comic book writers, right? Young people, older people who've been trying to break into the business for a really long time. And Marvel doesn't go into that pool. Instead, they just simply say, hey, what's up? I'm just going to take this guy who does movies. I'm going to take this person who does podcasts, both in this case. I'm going to take this guy who's written this novel. I'm going to bring them over and I'm going to, because they've already got a built in audience. I'm going to bring them over. I'm going to try and get some, so I can sell this one comic book or this quick series of comic books, as opposed to trying to genuinely get comic book people into the comic book industry and wait 2 years by filling up with solid talent, new talent, fresh ideas. I'm going to bring in all these guys and then work my way within the next two, maybe make it a 5 year plan just to be safe, to make the comic books all written really well. Instead of just people who have no business writing comic books. Not now. Maybe with some training, maybe with some classes, right? But you just go right into the big show and you start writing comic like that just doesn't make any sense. Just like in wrestling, you've got wrestlers who've been doing this for years and years and years, and you get some chump who's an actor or a singer gonna come in and I want to be a part of the show, and they're like, oh, we really want that audience here. Here's a quick little spike in ratings, but then you take a dump all over your wrestlers. Does that make sense? Like you can't bring in somebody else at the expense of actually talented people or your mainstay of people. This was really sad. That's what this was. This was like a woke person trying to disguise himself as a not woke person. That's what this was. And I'm not here to sit here and insult Cody Ziegler, except to say that, like as a person, I don't know this guy as a person. I don't know anything about this person. I don't want to assume anything about this person. But from what I've been shown, Cody Ziegler doesn't understand how to write a comic book. In my opinion, he doesn't know how to write a story, period. It doesn't have to be a hero's journey story. Too many people fall onto that. It's got to be a hero's journey. No, it doesn't have to be a hero's journey. He has to be a hero, and this guy has to be a villain. There certain things have to be there, but it doesn't have to be the hero's journey way. There are other ways to do this, right? But the idea is there was no way to. This was just. I'm going to base this on a couple of different little things that I know from looking up on Wikipedia. I'm going to put things in place, and boom, and you're going to like this because the plot says that you're supposed to like this. I'm sorry. You can write certain things to fit into a certain paint by numbers sort of way of doing things all you want. That's perfectly fine. But for the love of God, you can't make audiences. You can't paint by audience with the or paint by numbers or connect the dots with the audience. You actually have to write something worthy of being written. Like I said, it kills me that here are all these incredible writers out there who I've seen, and they can't get a job. They can't get a tryout at Marvel or at a DC or any. This is heartbreaking. It is genuinely heartbreaking. Yeah, this comic book, in my opinion, this comic book shouldn't have even been made. I am so disappointed by this story. Absolutely breaks my heart. Okay. There are a lot of people here. Jamal Lewis, yes, I decided to go live. Tombstone, hi, from Australia. Good day. I know I'm horrible at this. Oh, geez, hey, what's up, Derek? Nerdette, what's going on, Nerdette? Geez, a lot of people up too early in the morning. Cryptid, I miss you, man. I miss you big time. Second Street, what's going on, dude? Trinity, what's up, dude? John, that's my real name, Smith. That's actually pretty cool. All right, what's going on, everybody? I was hoping that Gwenverse stuff would be good, but now I have little hope. I don't even know. There's some Gwenverse stuff coming out. I'm just horrible. It's a cash grab. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's a cash grab. Yeah, Kate's indie work. I'm gonna try and talk about something besides just the comic book now. Yes, Kate's indie work was killer. It was fantastic, absolutely. But then he became Donnie Tropes afterwards. So it is what it is. Why can't they let Cullen Bunn do Spider-Man? Such a great character for sci-fi horror. Exactly, and Cullen Bunn would be good at something like that. I don't know. For me, I feel like you just ask people, "What do you wanna do?" Don't assign people stuff, right? Because the people in charge don't know how to do stuff like that anymore. Yeah, I'm gonna take it back to Jim Shooter again. I'm gonna take it back to Jim Shooter. This guy knew how to assign people to do something, and he knew when to just do something himself. I don't think there are very many people who are gonna argue that Secret Wars as a whole, even X-Men fans who just real by looking at myself now instead of looking at the comic book digitally. Being an X-Men fan, right? Maybe you didn't like that Spider-Man kicked everybody's butt, or yeah, kicked everybody's butt in the Secret Wars comic book. That's not actually what happened. He just got away from them, and he still wound up getting his butt handed to him. But anyway, the X-Men were done very well in there. I mean, how when Derek and I were just talking about this recently. Derek Pearson here. That's why I'm reading old comics now. I know, but Derek was just talking recently. Wasn't it in the Secret Wars that Storm at one point said, "Whoa, Professor X, I'm the leader of the X-Men now. I think you need to back off." Right? And it's true. It's true. The X-Men were very dynamic back then. There was actually a whole lot going on back then. There's a whole lot going on in the comic books back then because as much as anybody might say Jim Shooter was acting like a Nazi back then, because throw around the word Nazi all the time too, why don't you? At the end of the day, you can't argue that the best time in Marvel was that particular time and when the comics were first put out, when all of these ideas were great new ideas. It was fantastic. And it's the way that, in my opinion, it should have been. And nowadays, you just have let's just pull talent from you wrote a book, come on over. You wanna do this stuff? Like Marvel is begging people to come over and make comic books at this point. When did Marvel become beggars? It's painful to me. When did a company like Marvel become a beggar company? You got Disney behind you. They're not like that's the thing that's so amazing about this. The editor in chief right now, if I haven't looked at it because I don't do physical comics anymore, not often enough at least. Talk about old X-Men comic books, and I got all these old ones that I just bought recently, and most of them were X-Men comic books, right? Oh look, Donny Cates, you're so original. You created the Cosmic Ghost Rider, except no, you didn't. Look, this was back in what, early 90s? The original Cosmic Ghost Rider in the there we go, in the Guardians of the Galaxy back in the day. No, nothing that you've done is original in Marvel. The, I don't know what it is. Marvel should be a company that doesn't need doesn't need to be a beggar. You don't need beggar friends coming over. You could simply say, "Hey, we're Marvel. We got the backing of Disney. Kevin Feige isn't going to let us go anywhere because all these cool stories are coming from the comic books, and they recognize that. DC, AT&T, they don't recognize that. DC comic books could potentially go away someplace. In my observation, they could. They could wind up being sold, right? Or at least kept around and just we're going to keep the license, but we're not going to spend money on the comic books anymore. We're going to reduce the number of comic books coming out, right? Jim Lee's only got but so much say on that, and he cares way more about the movies because those are money makers and Batman than anything else. Um, but with Marvel, you've got the backing of a company, Disney, the one of the biggest companies in the world. That's just like, yeah, it's cool, baby. It's cool. They don't need to beg to bring up comic book sales. They could simply put the comic books out, make the comic books, get good people, use this pool of resources, search Reddit, search Facebook, search, what is it called? Deviant art. Search places where they're actually doing fan fiction and see the people who understand the characters and this works with what they're looking for. Get out of this whole Hollywood mindset of everything's got to be woke. Stop trying to check off boxes and stuff like that. How about you just make some good comic books? Find people who know how to make comic books instead of just because you put out a podcast doesn't mean you're going to be good at doing a comic book. Just because you do a movie doesn't mean you're going to be good at doing a comic book. Just because you wrote a novel doesn't mean you're going to be good at doing a comic book. They're very different genres. They're very different mediums specifically. It's heartbreaking. Are you more excited for Doctor Strange or Moon Knight? I'm more excited for Doctor Strange because Moon Knight has been changed too much. I don't know, maybe Moon Knight will really elate me, but I don't know. For right now, I don't have a lot of hope going into the Moon Knight thing. Um, I don't know, but I'm also old. Like, you gotta understand, like, my way of going into things. I'm old. I'm 46. I'm almost 47. My wife yells at me, "You're not 47 yet." I'm almost 47. July, I'll be 47. Come on. I'm old. Look at my beard. I've earned every gray hair, you know? I know I don't dye my hair. There's a couple grays in there somewhere. Just, I don't know, genetics. Has nothing to do with me, my parents. But, I look at some of this stuff and I say, meanwhile, Axel Alonso killing it at AWA Upshot. See, what a freaking fantastic point right there, right? They fired him at Marvel. They fired this guy at Marvel, and I don't know what happened. I don't know why. Nobody's talking about that stuff. But for the love of God, here's this guy who was considered right. One of the whole reasons why the Comics Gate stuff started was because they were like, "Oh, Axel Alonso doesn't know what he's doing." What happened? What happened? But anyway, with me, I'm old and I like the idea of, Moon Knight being the mercenary. I want Bushman there. You know what I'm saying? I want the idea that he died at the altar to Khonshu in Egypt. He walked from, what was it, the Sudan that he walked from, right? Like, this dude was, oh no, I think it was Morocco actually. Anyway, like, I want that story to still be there. That's the stuff that I want. Yeah, let's see what they pull out. Anyway, guys, I don't need this thing to be 6 hours long, so I'm gonna end this now. I was doing this before, and I realized I was already at an hour before. Wow, I was able to kick this out in far less time than before. I was doing this before on video, and it wound up being an hour long, and I wasn't as emotional as I am now. But I think I'm just kind of letting this stuff out. Anyway, it is what it is. this this wasn't a good comic book. I don't have anything personal against Cody Ziegler. I don't know him, but so I hope it doesn't feel like I'm dumping on this person. All it's his fault that Marvel sucks. No, that's not the case. For me, I literally just look at it as he's just a further example of Marvel not wanting to put in the work of finding good writers for comic books and just finding other people who have done stories elsewhere and figuring like it diminishes the product to me. It diminishes the product when you say anybody can write a comic book. If you've written a book, you can write a comic book. If you've done a movie or you've done a podcast or you've picked your nose in a certain way, you could write a comic book. Because no, you can't. You absolutely cannot. If you know how to make a comic book, then you can make a comic book. Aristotle, A is A. It's as simple as that. Stop overcomplicating things. And they've got the resources to do that anyway. Thank you, John. And thank you, everybody who is here or was here or will be here later. Love you guys. Like the video, watch an ad if those things still show up, and I'll talk to you guys later. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.